name is N. Sabanur.
Marvel can be proud of how X-Men 97 turned out, and the near-perfect Season 1 has been the ideal tribute to the legacy of X-Men the animated series from the 90s. The final episode of the season offers a proper closure to the existing story arc, but things still end on a cliffhanger, which is likely the base of the next season. One of the biggest revelation comes at the end of the episode, when N. Sabanur, aka Apocalypse, one of the greatest X-Men villains of all time, is introduced. And in this video, we will explore everything around his appearance and the possible direction of his story arc going ahead. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
I who am eternal can never be defeated.
What happened to Apocalypse in X-Men the animated series? X-Men 97 claims to be a continuation of the events of X-Men the animated series, and this might be a good time to look back at Apocalypse's story arc in the 90s animated series, as it will provide valuable context to his role in X-Men 97. This ancient and powerful mutant aimed to rule the entire planet and rebuild it in his way. In order to create a new world, the old one had to be destroyed, and Apocalypse came up with a device that could turn mutants into his horsemen of death, serving him loyally. However, in the future timeline, Apocalypse faced Cable and realized that there would be no easy victory in this fight. He ended up stealing a time-traveling device, and his plan was to go back in time and assassinate the most powerful psychics. This would cause time to collapse on itself, and the X-Men tried their best to stop him before it was too late. Things were all the more difficult because Apocalypse ended up in the axis of time, and even destroying the device that rejuvenated him every century did not work. Finally, Magneto and the X-Men managed to rescue the psychics before Apocalypse eliminated them, and the combined powers of the psychics were used to banish him into the astral plane. While everyone thought they got rid of Apocalypse permanently, the powerful mutant had a backup plan. He had saved Fabian Cortez earlier for such a situation, and now he demanded a new physical body from Cortez. When he failed to find one, Apocalypse took over his body and came back to Earth, and clearly, his ambitions were still intact. This is the backdrop of his appearance in X-Men 97, and it seems like Apocalypse has not given up on his dreams of global dominance, and he now has some sinister plan up his sleeve to get the job done. How is Apocalypse introduced in X-Men 97? The season finale sees the X-Men dealing with a twin crisis. On one hand, Bastion and his Prime Sentinels pose a threat to all mutants, and on the other hand, a disillusioned Magneto wants to destroy the human world as we know it. After multiple challenges, the X-Men finally save the world one more time, and with some from a turned Magneto. They even managed to stop Asteroid M hurling toward the Earth. The asteroid is vaporized, but the destruction of Magneto's floating base also sees the X-Men disappearing. They're all presumed dead, and Forge can be seen mourning their loss, especially that of his loved Storm. A few months have passed and the world has assumed that the mutant superheroes are gone, when suddenly, Bishop pays a visit to Forge. He explains that something or someone has yanked the X-Men through time, and he offers Forge the opportunity to bring them back. Meanwhile, we get a look at some of the X-Men, including Rogue, Beast, Professor Xavier, Nightcrawler, and Morph, who are all stranded in ancient Egypt. They see a mutant being attacked by a group of warriors, and the X-Men help him out, yet to know his real identity. Finally, Professor Xavier communicates with him, and they learn that the mutant is none other than N. Sabanur. Since the X-Men are already familiar with the horrors that he brings, they are left in shock, and Beast nicely sums up our thoughts with this exclamation, "Oh dear." Is N. Sabanur in ancient Egypt already a villain? What is he doing there? Those who are aware of the origin story of Apocalypse will know that he is a timeless ancient mutant, and thus existing around 3,500 years in the past is not unthinkable. N. Sabanur was born with mutant X gene because of his gray skin and blue lips. He was abandoned and looked down upon. He was taken in by Baal of the Sandstormers, but contrary to his evil villain avatar, he was quite generous and selfless in his early life. It all changed after the arrival of Kang the Conqueror as the Pharaoh Ramatut. The time-traveling Kang intended to find young Apocalypse because he knew about his fate, and after his men killed Baal, N. Sabanur truly embraces his ruthless side. He uses his access to advanced alien technology and turns out to become one of the most dreaded villains of all time. However, all said and done, it seems like the X-Men haven't met the man who is capable of destroying the world yet. You have to remember that we are way back in time, and there's a good chance that that Saban still retains his selfless and compassionate nature. He's probably not even as powerful as he becomes later, and this is also justified by how helpless he seems against a few mortal warriors who attack him. The X-Men, however, will be faced with a dilemma in the upcoming narrative. Can someone who is set to commit heinous crimes in a future timeline be punished before he turns evil? The bigger question is, can the X-Men change his fate by siding with him and fighting the evil Pharaoh Kang the Conqueror? We get a look at the futuristic installation behind Saban before the scene cuts off, and this is probably a hint that Kang is already there in this timeline. We have already seen a heroic and ethical side of Magneto, but it will be a far stretch if the same is applied to Apocalypse as well. We expect the X-Men to try and succeed to some extent, but evil nature, which is the fate of Apocalypse, in all likelihood cannot be changed. Of course, it will be a rather long wait before the second season is released and we finally get the answers.
So much pain, my children.
What does his appearance in the post-credits scenes mean for the narrative? X-Men 97 Season 1 has an interesting post-credits scene, which again gives you a glimpse of Apocalypse. However, this time he is in the present timeline, and he can be seen looking through the devastation in Genosha. Everything is in ruins, and his voice can be heard almost mourning the unthinkable destruction and massacre that took place here. "So much pain, my children, so much death," he can be heard saying, before he pulls out one of Gambit's cards from the rubble. We almost see his face break into a faint smile as the scene cuts away, and Apocalypse has some plans behind his presence in Genosha. From the looks of it, he might just have something to do with Gambit, and this might be a great opportunity to bring back the fallen X-Man. How can Gambits Resurrection work against the X-Men? Those who are familiar with the X-Men comic series Blood of Apocalypse will know that Gambit has once been turned into one of Apocalypse's 4 Horsemen of Death, and this might be on the cards in X-Men 97 as well. However, the circumstances under which Gambit turned to serve Apocalypse are going to be very difficult in the show. In the comics, Gambit volunteered to become one of Apocalypse's Horsemen because he was disillusioned by the mutant mayhem caused by the Scarlet Witch. Gambit believed that Apocalypse could help in the restoration of mutant kind, and he surely wasn't dead like he is in X-Men 97. He was also manipulated by a love triangle orchestrated by Mystique. A new mutant named Pulse had appeared, and there was some romantic tension between him and Rogue. Seeing his love interest in 2 minds, Gambit was jealous, and Mystique fueled the turmoil by manipulating Rogue to date Pulse. In this vulnerable moment, Gambit was lured by Apocalypse to work for him, and Rogue and the X-Men had a major shock in store for them when Gambit attacked them as the new Death. The comic book narrative, however, came to an abrupt end when Apocalypse was defeated and Gambit suddenly disappeared. He did have a few more run-ins with the X-Men as Apocalypse's sidekick, but finally, he stopped being Death. It is also revealed that Gambit went to his dark side after Mystique convinced him that Rogue was infected by a fatal virus, which could only be cured by serving Apocalypse. His Death personality did make a few comebacks, but overall, Gambit was back to his superhero side. As for X-Men, things have played out differently. Gambit might be lured with the opportunity of coming back to life, and there is also a possibility that Gambit will not have a choice at all. At the service of Apocalypse, Gambit can become a deadly weapon against the X-Men, and someone as cunning as Apocalypse would know exactly how to exploit their love for Gambit. The prospect of Gambit fighting a shocked Rogue and other former teammates is quite exciting, and we cannot wait to find out how it all goes down. That being said, we are also quite certain that at some point, Gambit will be transformed back to his old self by some means. We just don't know the extent of damage that he will cause before his X-Men persona is restored.
So much death.
Marvelous verdict, an expected appearance, but a surprising version. Previously in our speculative videos, we have spoken at length about the possibility of Apocalypse appearing at the end of Season 1. It wasn't completely unexpected, because someone like Mr. Sinister or Bastion is not the boss-level antagonist that you can drag along for multiple seasons. X-Men 97 needed a consistent threat for the X-Men, and there are few greater than Apocalypse to make their life a living hell. The 2 glimpses of Apocalypse in 2 different timelines suggest that we will have enough of him in Season 2. And if he does bring in Gambit by his side, things will get twice as interesting. As great as the first season of X-Men 97 was, expect more fireworks and intense storylines in the next part of the series. Don't forget to let us know in the comments below what you think about Apocalypse appearing in ancient Egypt, and also tell us how you think his appearance will set up the storyline for the upcoming season. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!